Guys, before we start this, I would just like to say all mental health channels are going to be moved to this new YouTube channel I made called Team Hoot Mental Health. I'll link it here, and I'll also link it in the description, so go subscribe because that's where all the new stuff's going to be from here on out. Let's go. My mom got a call from the elementary school principal. Mrs. Francis, your son Kyle is selling pieces of gum for 50 cents. This is unacceptable. What are you going to do about it? Today is Mental Health Monday. It's also Mother's Day. Yeah, I'll post this a day after Mother's Day. We're going to tell a little story about my mom. In 2003, my little brother Scott got in a horrific accident where 45% of his body was covered in 1st to 3rd degree burns. Every day for the first 2 weeks, the doctors continued to remind all of us that he could die. This is serious. He could die. So after 3 months of being in the intensive care burn unit, Scott was sent home for the first time in 3 months, and within that week, he was already going back to school. Just to paint this picture, Scott got burns all over his chest, and what they were worried about was that the scar tissue would get so tight that he wouldn't be able to have mobility in his arms anymore. So he walked around with his arms elevated to keep everything from tightening up. He was bald because with all the burns on his body, they used skin grafts from the top of his head to help heal the burns all over his body, because his head was one of the few places that wasn't burned. Now, think back to high school, when you were in high school, or if you are in high school, how you always thought everybody was thinking about you. Everyone was always looking at you. Now imagine my brother Scott, arms up elevated, really baggy clothes because he didn't want to put too much pressure on his burns, bald. Now just imagine what he was going through. On Scott's second day of school, my mom got a call from Scott, and he was irate. Fuck this school, fucking asshole piece of shit, just fuck this, and this guy's an asshole. And my mom's starting to freak out because she doesn't know what happened. Like, her son's back in school. He just went through this traumatic experience. What's going on? She's trying to make sense of it. She can't figure it out. Let's cut back 20 minutes. So a student school counselor was doing his internship. He called Scott down to the office, made him miss the bus so we could have a chat with him. He asked Scott how he was doing, how his first couple days back were going, and Scott goes, they're going pretty good. I'm feeling fine. The school counselor stopped Scott mid-sentence. Obviously, you're not doing fine. No one in your situation could possibly be doing fine. Scott stood up, told the guy to f*** off, pissed. He left the room, called my mom immediately, and this is where the conversation started. Mama Bear came out. She called the real school counselor, the one that wasn't wearing their diapers. She called the principal. She called the superintendent. She called the school's psychologist. She called everybody, and she gave every single one of them a piece of her mind. I have a son who almost died. He's been through hell and back with multiple surgeries, scraping dead skin off of his body. On top of that, he's had nightmares, so he's afraid to sleep. He still has nightmares, and he's still afraid to sleep. Oh, and then there's more surgeries that he has where they have to do even more wretched stuff to him. He's trying to readjust coming back to school with all of these eyes on him, wondering what happened and what is going on, only making his mind even more fragile than it already is. He's been seeing a professional psychiatrist since they pulled his breathing tube out of his mouth so he was able to breathe on his own. He's been seeing this psychiatrist to help with the nightmares and the guilt that he feels, and you have a school counselor, not even a school counselor, an intern, telling my son he is not okay when he just made it through 2 days of school. The last thing you tell someone with this fragile state of mind is that they are not okay. Now this is the part of the story where you can see where Scott got his assertiveness to say "F you" to a person of authority. School counselor. Got it from my mom. That's my mom. She scared the shit out of the school, and she was right. She's 100% right. My depression stuff started in 1995, and Scott's accident happened in 2003. So for 8 years, my mom was on the leading edge of childhood mental health. We were figuring it out as we were going because I was on the edge of the depression stuff. So she knows this. She knows what works and what doesn't work. And this wasn't the first time my mom stood up for her kids in the form of she stood up for us a lot, but in the form of a mental health situation. The first time was when a doctor was prescribing me lithium to help with my depression. Way back when. And it ended up poisoning me. It made me really, 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 really sick. I missed a lot of school because of it. Like 8 months of school. She mentioned to the doctor, like, we need to get him off of this. This lithium is killing my son. It's not helping. It's actually making... The doctor flat out told my mom that she was being stupid. And that by taking me off of that medication, she is killing her son. When I talked to her about this now, she says this was the first time she stood up to a professional doctor, pointed at him and said, "You are fired. You are killing my son." Shortly after that, she called multiple mental health professionals, and now going back and talking to mental health professionals now, since I'm, they said I would have died. They said I would have died if I stayed on it. That doctor wasn't qualified enough to work with childhood depression that way. He was qualified to work with adults in completely different situations. She was way more qualified than that intern at this situation than that intern was. She's been in the trenches. She's talked to professionals. This guy or girl, I don't know who it was, probably didn't even... He's in the field now. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know how to handle this type of situation. Try and learn that in a book. That's my mom. So the school calls my mom irate and angry that her son Kyle is selling gum for 50 cents a piece to all these kids at school, and all these kids are chewing gum, or they can't have gum at school. What are you going to do about this? 50 cents for a piece of gum? I'm raising a hell of an entrepreneur.
Come on.